Why do audiobook narrators talk so slowly? I'm learning that this is a hot button issue for a lot of audiobook fans out there. And so I figured, hey, I'm a narrator of audiobooks. Why do we talk so slowly? Because you're right, that slower, more deliberate pace crops up often, and I haven't reflected on it seriously, the specific reasons why this happens, in a long time, since the beginning of my career, basically. So I did. I asked around and I thought about my own life and experiences and career, and I've got some ideas for you, if not answers. I'm Jay. Welcome to my booth here. And I will say up front, before I talk about any of the reasons that I came up with in my reflecting, point blank, we are simply directed to go a little bit more slowly. We are taught, coached, directed to slow down our narrations more often than not. And the biggest reason for this is a lot of starting narrators, myself, I was guilty of this when I was beginning. We just move too quickly. You feel like there's some sort of pressure that if you don't move through the text, then you're doing some disservice, that people aren't going to think that you're good or something. There's a lot of things that feed into it that push you to go more quickly, that you're wasting time, that you're breathing too much, that there's too much silence. You want to get it out there. And that leads to you moving more quickly. But it also has the side effect, if, for example, I just arbitrarily start talking a little bit more quickly, all of a sudden there's a little bit of a subconscious thing where you start to maybe sometimes doubt that I have the confidence that I can take up the time and space. And so that can feed into it, but also your brain and listening experience as the listener, you have to spend a little bit more energy and a little bit more effort keeping up with and understanding what I'm saying to make sure that you don't lose any words that I'm delivering you. And all of that leads to just a little bit of mistrust in the narrator, or lack of trust or loss of trust, as well as you just having I don't want to say you specifically, but it runs the risk of somebody having a not as great listening experience, whereas a slower, more deliberate pace is more broadly accessible. In addition to that, if I have a slower, more deliberate pace, and I'm willing to sit with you and just sit in silence for a moment, that also imparts a level of confidence and authority over the thing, that I know what I'm doing and that I'm taking care of the performance here in the book, and we're taking you on a journey, which is helpful in a lot of performance realms or public speaking as well. So there is that. So, and then into talking about these specific whys, these are sort of my own speculative reasonings as to why this crops up. And I don't know how true these are, but I think that some of them do feed into this, whether or not they're the global reason why, or if they're just little side aspects to it, just as a little caveat. But they start somewhat technical, and then they are also somewhat performance or artistic based. And between the two, I think more broadly speaking about the whole thing, a lot of this pacing comes down to we have to, as narrators, balance the technical demands of performing an audiobook, the actual process of recording and producing an audiobook. We have to balance that with the performance side of things, a good, believable, lived-in performance. And the best way to balance those two things, oftentimes I think either is a result of, or results in, or is the cause of, however you want to say it, the slower, more deliberate pacing is striking that balance. Okay, so I'm going to start with the technical, then we'll go to the performance stuff. On the technical side, the number one reason is the authors that we work with spend a lot of time, energy, effort, and skill, artistry. They spend a lot of themselves choosing words, ultimately. Writing, choosing words, putting them in a specific order. And the magic of it is that effort and the selection itself can create worlds that convey ideas, bring us into characters. It's magic, and that's what I really love about books and audiobooks. And it's our job and responsibility as narrators to honor all of that with a good performance, hopefully, but also by ensuring that each of those selected words is the right one. And on the one hand, that's kind of a, well, yeah, I should hope so statement. But on the other hand, it's somewhat easier said than done. If you've got 100,000 words, you're going to make some mistakes. And if you try to go quickly through it, you're going to make more mistakes. So the slower pace somewhat is preserving accuracy to a degree. Yeah. And then next up, in terms of the production timeline or the actual process of recording an audiobook, I do think that the accuracy aspect feeds into this a little bit, which then cascades back into the pacing thing. The process of recording an audiobook, counterintuitively to me when I was starting out, happens really, really quickly, or pretty quickly in general. To give you a example here, you'll usually, when you get booked or cast to narrate a book, you'll get a set date of recording windows usually, and about 2 weeks to a month before that, you'll receive the manuscript. The 2 weeks to a month before, sometimes you'll get it well in advance beyond that, and sometimes you'll get it on a Friday and you have to go in and record on a Monday. But on average, about 2 weeks to a month, you go into the pre-production phase where the narrator, me, I get to read the book, I get to make notes, I get to get a general sense of it, the plot, the characters, anything, word pronunciations, essentially any information that I want to have in my back pocket before I go into the recording session, anything I might need as I'm recording to make it a smooth process, and I want to make sure I get it right, I make note of and clarify beforehand. And then the recording process happens in a really, really concentrated window. So you've got 2 weeks to a month to prepare, and then you go into the recording session, which if you have a 100,000 to 120,000 word book, on average, that'll break down to about 10 to 12 hours, give or take, after it's all been recorded and edited. Now, that 10 to 12 hour book will be recorded over the course of probably 3 to 4 days, meaning it's a really concentrated window to get it done, and we only get one shot to do it. Striking that balance between the technical and the performance. Again, the pacing thing just kind of shows up to increase accuracy and help us do it. So in terms of both word accuracy, but also sense of things, the slower pace allows us to scan ahead and stick the landing on sentences because it's impossible to rehearse a 12-hour book. It would be lovely if you could, and sometimes I will rehearse scenes of a book. For example, if there's a scene where there's 7 characters talking back and forth and across the room to each other, and I want to make sure that I can do that fluidly on the day, I'll practice that a couple times maybe, both to smooth out any character voices that I want to do, but also to get the switching down. That type of thing I might rehearse, but the whole book, you just can't do it. There's not enough time, and, it's just impossible to do. So essentially, we're doing a lot of it for the first time when we're recording. And we've got to stick the landing, got to make it make sense. And this is where expert narrators come in and make things feel a little bit more smooth, a little bit more lived in, a little bit more alive, because they've got practice doing it once and doing it really, really well. So that's the recording process. We're balancing the technical demands. It's got to be right. We got to hit the meaning. We've got to have the arc of sentences, but we've also got to perform it really well so the deliberate pace shows up a lot more often. And then in the performance side of things, the artistic reasonings behind stuff, these are just things that I like about the pacing. So on top of if you speed something up, it can at times err into that feeling of insecurity as a listener if someone's talking really quickly. You can think of any politician. If you look at a politician who's confident, knows what they're saying, and is good at what they're saying, you kind of follow along and you can buy into stuff more easily. And if there's somebody who you can smell when somebody doesn't have the confidence, And so that's one way to think about it in a real world context. Other performance things, silence cannot be underrated in cannot be overrated, cannot be overrated in audiobooks, I think, because it is just your imagination, the listener's imagination, and someone's words and someone's voice. There's something really cool about that alchemy there, where you have the license to have a completely unique experience that's only yours. And if a silence shows up, you get to fill that silence with whatever your imagination wants, which is, I think, a really cool thing. As an example, if there's a scene, a really short scene that is simply hello and a hi, that could be anything. And then you can have the silence to fill it in with a lot of juicy drama, as it were. So one example could be two star-crossed lovers who are meeting again for the first time in decades. Hello. Hi. I'm not really performing it necessarily very well, but you get to fill that silence with their facial expressions, the heartbeat in each of those people. It's just incredible. Or two mortal sworn enemies about to have a death match. Hello. Hi. Oh, and that'd be a really weird greeting for mortal enemies, but you know what I mean. Anyway, all to say, silence cannot be undervalued. Value silence. I screw up with the double negatives, but value silence in this stuff. It's cool, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm losing my train of thought, but I'll leave it there. If you've got other reasons why you think this shows up, or if you're a narrator yourself and you have reasons that you think this stuff shows up, let me know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And if you have more questions about audiobooks, audiobook narration, or voiceover, let me know. That's what I'm here for. That and telling stories and stuff. Anyway, until the next one of these, be well, and I'll see you there. Toodles.